What if I told you that a powerful religion has been hidden from humanity for thousands of years? How many times have you felt like the history we've been taught isn't the full story? How often have you heard just one version of events shaped by those in power, while deeper spiritual truths were buried, forgotten, or outright forbidden? This hidden secret could completely change how you understand history, faith, and spirituality. Imagine for a moment that there's a hidden thread connecting ancient African civilizations, kings and priests, and spiritual mysteries and rituals that survived slavery, invasions, colonial empires, and even religious censorship. Black religion, with its ancient wisdom, has been hidden, distorted, and even demonized for thousands of years because it holds something many have feared: the key to immense spiritual power that could free minds and transform societies. What if I told you traces of this power are still alive today, even though most people don't realize it? Symbols, chants, and stories have been disguised, while the true heart of this spirituality remains in the shadows, waiting to be rediscovered. This isn't just about faith. We're talking about a spiritual force as old as humanity itself. A force that guided kings and warriors and inspired entire civilizations to build empires that few remember now. Why was this knowledge hidden? Who would want to erase the traces of this black spiritual heritage? Many historians argue that parts of Africa's history were deliberately erased. Religions from the continent were labeled forbidden, dark, or pagan. But behind those beliefs lies a wisdom so profound, it challenges the structures imposed by the Western world. Have you ever heard of rituals that connect directly with nature, the elements, and invisible forces that shape life? Have you stopped to consider that African spirituality, which gave rise to many ideas now widespread around the world, may be more present in your life than you realize? Despite attempts to deny it, the truth is this black religion, hidden for thousands of years, contains secret codes for survival, power, and connection with the divine. It's not just lost history. It's a living, breathing history that still echoes in music, dance, traditions, and even in the hidden meanings of some sacred texts. Could some passages in the Bible itself carry signs and clues of this spirituality? What if the world's greatest spiritual secrets actually come from traditions that were silenced? This video invites you to look beyond what you've always been told. It's time to question everything. Open your eyes to a truth that might shock you, but also set you free. The black religion hidden for millennia isn't just a forgotten chapter in history. It's the foundation of something bigger: identity, power, and a connection to the deepest roots of humanity. What you're about to discover might shake your beliefs and change how you see the spiritual world. Before we dive deeper, think about this. What's true for you? What do you really know about your faith and the origins of the sacred? Get ready, because we're about to embark on a journey across millennia, uncovering forbidden secrets and revealing truths that were hidden at all costs. And this is just the beginning. Now, before we go further into this journey of ancient secrets, I want to know, how do you feel hearing this? Did you ever imagine such a powerful spiritual truth was so hidden and rarely talked about? Or is this all new to you? Drop a comment below about what has caught your attention the most so far. Your opinion matters. It helps us keep this conversation alive and builds a community of people who want to uncover the truth behind the official story. And hey, if you've made it this far, it means this content resonates with you, right? So, go ahead and hit the like button. It's more than just a click. Every like tells YouTube this topic matters and should be shown to more people. You can help spread this knowledge and awaken others. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos where we'll reveal even deeper secrets, stories erased from history, and truths that never made it into the textbooks. Trust me, You won't want to miss what's coming next. So, comment now. Do you believe these truths were hidden on purpose? Why? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever wondered what human history would look like if all the secrets hadn't been erased, distorted, or hidden? It's like the timeline was selectively scratched, showing only parts of the story while plunging the rest into darkness. Black religion, this ancestral spirituality, is one of those rare gems buried like a lost book, whose pages still echo wisdom, power, and connection to something far greater than ourselves. When we talk about ancient African civilizations, we're not just talking about people who lived thousands of years ago, but about true keepers of spiritual knowledge so profound that, if fully revealed, it could change how you see God, life, and even your own soul. The stories about great African kingdoms like Egypt, Nubia, the Mali Empire, and many others that thrived long before Europe emerged from the Middle Ages reveal something remarkable. All these civilizations shared a strong spiritual connection, a divine code woven into every ritual, every monument, and every chant. This black religion, which was gradually erased, is tied to the very beginnings of humanity, with traditions that predate Christianity and hold spiritual keys to the meaning of life, connection with invisible forces, and the true power within every person. Think about the pyramids. They still baffle engineers and scholars today, standing as living marks of knowledge that go far beyond conventional science. Do you really believe all this was just the result of stone and simple tools? Or is there a spiritual secret, an unseen force guiding every choice, every stone, every design, creating a symbolic universe beyond what human eyes can see? That's exactly where black religion comes in. It offers a worldview where the spiritual and the material walk hand in hand, where the energy of nature, ancestors, and the divine come together to create something eternal. But of course, anything that threatens existing power structures has always been silenced. European colonizers knew these traditions were more than local rituals. They were sources of power, identity, and resistance. And when you want to dominate a people, what do you do first? You erase their history, alter their spirituality, and turn what was sacred into something forbidden. That's why so many of these practices were demonized, branded as witchcraft, when in fact they held the purity of a direct connection with God and the universe's power. You can't talk about spirituality without mentioning the African chants that crossed oceans and reached the Americas during the darkest times of slavery. Did you know many of these seemingly simple chants were actually coded prayers? Each drumbeat carried a frequency capable of aligning body, soul, and spirit. This isn't just theory. It's living history, passed down through generations. Even when books try to erase it all, this heritage still pulses in rhythms, dances, festivals, and expressions of faith you see today, often without people realizing their ancestral roots. Picture a circle of people around a bonfire, singing, clapping, and dancing to the drum beat. It might look like just a party, but it's actually a way to invoke invisible forces and connect with the essence of the universe. This is one of the core principles of black religion. It's the awareness that there's no separation between humans, nature, and the divine. Everything is connected. Everything vibrates at the same frequency. Once you understand this, your whole way of living and seeing life changes forever. And what about the legends of priests and priestesses who knew about plants, elements, and the vital energy in every human being? Many stories tell of miraculous healings, connections with spiritual beings, and rituals so powerful they're still studied by researchers around the world. But this wisdom wasn't passed down in books or official documents. It survived in family secrets, elders' whispers, and the memories of those who refused to let the flame go out. So why didn't you learn about this in school? Why does history glorify only certain peoples and religions while labeling others as marginal or inferior? Maybe because admitting the power of black religion means accepting that history isn't as linear as we've been told. It means recognizing there's a hidden wisdom, a spiritual force as old as life itself, and we've been kept away from it on purpose. Now, I want to invite you to reflect. Can you feel this connection when you hear a drum beat, watch nature in silence, or sense something greater guiding your life? Could it be that deep down, your spirit is asking for something beyond logic, a connection to these forgotten roots? If you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. What stands out most about this revival of Black spiritual history? Have you heard anything like this before? Comment below with the phrase, "I want to know the hidden truth," so I know you're with me on this journey. Have you ever thought about what Black religion really means? We're not just talking about an organized religion like we know today. We're talking about a deep spiritual heritage, an essence that transcends time and space, carrying some of humanity's oldest codes. Black religion isn't just a practice. It's a way of connecting with life, nature, ancestors, and the divine. A path few dare to explore. It's a dive into a vast ocean of wisdom that's been intentionally hidden, marginalized, and misrepresented. Because what's hidden here is transformative. Since the dawn of history, even before writing, African peoples developed complex rituals that united the spiritual and physical worlds in an instant. Imagine a circle of warriors and priests chanting under the moonlight, calling on forces beyond human understanding. These practices weren't seen as religion in the Western sense. They were a way of life. Everything was connected: the earth, the harvests, the ancestors, the protective spirits. There was an understanding that everything is energy, and every word, sound, and gesture held sacred power. The earliest evidence of what we now call Black religion can be found in cave paintings, ancient sculptures, and rituals preserved by tribes that never bowed to colonial empires. We're talking about traditions as old as humanity itself, starting on the African continent. You know that feeling when you hear the sound of a drum? It feels familiar because deep down, our body and soul recognize that beat as an ancestral call, like memories etched into our spiritual DNA. It's important to understand that the word Black here doesn't just refer to skin color, but to the depth of this knowledge and its mysterious power, something that has been feared for centuries by those who didn't understand it. When colonizers arrived in Africa, they encountered a spirituality so alive and so different from what they knew. Their only response was to try to erase and demonize these beliefs. After all, how do you control a people who believe their strength comes directly from something divine? Something that can't be broken by chains, weapons, or fear. Many of these peoples believe their ancestors never left them. They're present in the trees, the wind, and the waters. Every part of nature is a manifestation of the divine. This way of seeing the world is powerful because it gives people a sense of belonging and strength that doesn't depend on institutions, temples, or books. It's inside you, around you, in everything. That's why these traditions were seen as dangerous by empires. They didn't need permission to exist. They didn't need intermediaries to reach the sacred. And the more Europe expanded its colonial empires, the more urgent it became to erase this heritage. Languages were banned, drums silenced, histories rewritten. But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't erase what's written in people's hearts. Today, Black religion survives in hidden forms, often tucked inside rituals seen as folklore, in popular festivals, music, and even symbols found within other religions. If you start paying attention, you'll notice many practices now considered mystical or spiritual have deep roots in African traditions, like the use of healing herbs, ritual baths, offerings, and repetitive chants to raise energy. All of this comes from ancient wisdom that crossed oceans. When Africans were torn from their lands and taken as slaves, they carried not only their bodies, but also their beliefs, their gods, and their stories. And that legacy is still alive, even if disguised. Maybe you felt a different energy standing near a capoeira circle, for example. It's not just a dance or a fight. It's a living ritual, a direct connection to ancestral power. And what about those chants that seem to touch something deep inside your soul, even if you don't understand the words? That's the magic of Black religion. It speaks a universal language, a language you feel, not explain. But have you ever wondered why so many of these traditions have been labeled evil or satanic? Who decided that? Who benefits from this story? The truth is, when something gives you power, when it gives you spiritual independence, systems of control start to shake. It's never in the interest of those in power for people to realize they have a direct connection to the divine within themselves. That's why this religion has been persecuted, hidden, and even criminalized at different points in history. Now, I want you to reflect with me. Have you ever felt this force? Have you ever sensed something greater inside you? A connection to your ancestors, the earth's energy, something no one can take away? If you have, leave the phrase, "I feel this ancestral force," in the comments, so I know you understand the depth of what we're talking about here. And know this, what we have yet to explore goes far beyond that. Because if what we've talked about so far is a living, powerful, connected spirituality, what really scared empires was something even deeper and more dangerous than you might imagine. Have you ever wondered why certain truths have been carefully erased from history? Why some spiritual traditions, especially those from Africa, have been demonized and hidden as if they were too dangerous to reveal? The answer isn't just prejudice or ignorance. It's strategic. It's about power. Whenever a religion or spirituality gives people control over their own connection to the divine, it's seen as a threat to systems that want to keep everyone under control. Black religion, with its deep roots and ancestral knowledge, has always offered that autonomy, strength, and direct connection to invisible forces. This terrified colonial empires and churches for centuries. When European colonizers arrived in Africa, they didn't just see land to exploit. They saw a rich, vibrant, spiritually powerful culture that didn't rely on Western religious structures. While Europe tried to impose a worldview based on hierarchy and submission to religious institutions, African peoples lived with a completely different model. Their relationship with the sacred was intimate, everyday, and natural. This was something the colonial system couldn't tolerate. How do you keep a people subjugated if they believe they carry the divine spark and their ancestors' protection inside them? How do you control a culture that refuses to bow to imposed dogma? That's when an intense process of cultural and spiritual erasure began. Churches linked with colonizers aimed to replace local traditions with a religion that centralized power, put intermediaries between people and God, and dictated what was right and wrong. To do this, they had to teach a new faith and destroy the old beliefs, label them pagan, profane, or even satanic. Everything connected with Black religion became a target. Sacred dances were declared dangerous rituals. Drums were seen as evil instruments. Priests and priestesses were treated like spiritual enemies. Behind all of this was fear. There was a deep fear that these traditions, with their powerful rites and symbols, could unite people and spark resistance against domination. Imagine an entire community gathered around a nighttime ritual, singing and beating drums, calling on their ancestors. This wasn't just spirituality. It was a political and social force, a call for freedom, a reminder that no one can imprison the soul of a people. Of course, that kind of power couldn't be tolerated by empires built on oppression. Over the centuries, churches brutally intervened. Spiritual leaders were hunted down, traditions were banned, and entire languages wiped out because they carried ancestral stories and prayers. What couldn't be destroyed physically was twisted and distorted. How many times have you heard certain African practices called macabre or evil? That's no accident. This narrative was created to instill fear, to make people reject something that is actually pure, true, and deeply connected to the divine. The cover-up was so effective that, in many places, communities began to forget parts of their own history. But truth always finds a way to survive. Black religion adapted, blending into festivals, music, and symbols that might seem simple but carry deep spiritual meaning. Even inside Christian churches, traces of this hidden spirituality remain, disguised and waiting to be recognized by those who are ready to see. It's important to realize that colonization wasn't just about taking land. It was a spiritual invasion. The churches were meant to convert people, but in practice, this meant erasing everything that gave those communities power and identity. And even today, we still feel the echoes of that struggle. Many people are afraid to explore their spiritual roots because they've been taught that it's wrong or dangerous. But what's truly dangerous? The knowledge that frees, or the ignorance that keeps people trapped? Think about it. All this was done to create a world where only a few voices could speak about God while others were silenced. The surprising thing is, despite all efforts to hide it, the power of black religion never vanished. It lives on, engraved in the souls of those who carry it, in songs, dances, and prayers passed down for generations. Maybe that's why, when someone starts connecting with this ancestral energy, they feel a powerful, unexplainable force. A sense of rediscovering something that was always there. I want to invite you to think about this. Do you believe truth always finds a way to resist, even when people try to hide it? Do you believe these traditions have survived because they carry something that can't be destroyed? Write in the comments. Truth always resists, if you feel this force too. But get ready. What's coming next goes even deeper. Because it's not enough to understand why this spirituality was hidden. We need to understand how it stays alive and what really scared empires and churches throughout history. Have you ever wondered if the Bible, the sacred book for millions around the world, might contain traces of African traditions that were deliberately hidden or reinterpreted? It's uncomfortable to imagine that beneath the pages we know, there might be whole layers of stories, symbols, and meanings that were changed over centuries to serve political and religious interests. But what if I told you many African spiritual traditions, the core of black religion, have direct links to teachings, metaphors, and passages found in the Bible itself? That changes the way we see history, doesn't it? Many scholars say the texts we know today went through a strict selection process when the biblical canon was formed. Imagine a council of powerful religious and political leaders deciding which books would be included and which would be left out. Isn't it strange that texts seen as a threat to power were simply erased or hidden? Entire books banned, stories summarized or changed, references that could connect faith to the spiritual cradle of humanity, Africa, were left out. Take the story of Moses, for example. Have you noticed how the Hebrew people's journey through the desert and the Exodus are closely tied to Egypt? Egypt, one of the greatest African powers in ancient times, was seen not just as a land of wealth and wisdom, but also as a spiritual center. It's no coincidence that many Egyptian rituals and symbols, which form the foundation of African culture, appear in different forms in the Bible. The Ark of the Covenant, for example, resembles sacred objects used in ancient African ceremonies. The priest's robes, purification rites, the use of incense and oils, all have roots much older than many realize. And when we talk about biblical figures, How many of them have direct ties to the African continent? How often have you thought about how people like Joseph, Moses, and even Jesus had contact with traditions deeply influenced by Black spirituality? Why aren't these connections openly discussed? Maybe because accepting them means recognizing that the origins of many spiritual concepts aren't where we were taught, but rather in traditions that have been silenced. There are also the so-called apocryphal scriptures, books removed from the official canon. Among them are passages that hint at a much broader, more diverse spirituality. The Book of Enoch, for example, talks about angels, demons, and heavenly secrets in a way that's really close to ancient African traditions, which have always understood that the spiritual world is complex, full of forces, beings, and energies that interact with humans. So why was this book banned? Why is it hardly ever discussed, even among scholars? Is there something inside it that could open people's eyes to a truth way beyond the official story? Some parts of the Bible mention wisdom coming from African kings and queens down south, like the Queen of Sheba, who met King Solomon. That story isn't just a historical tidbit. It shows there was real respect for African wisdom. But over time, that recognition disappeared, and the narrative started painting Africa as a continent without light, which we know isn't true. What do you think would happen if people found out that many of the prayer, fasting, and sacrifice practices in the Bible actually have roots in ancient African rituals? What if I told you that during colonization, the Bible was used as a tool of control, but at the same time, it hid codes and symbols pointing to the spiritual power those colonizers tried so hard to erase? Think about how many metaphors and parables might mean something totally different from what we learned in church, especially if we look at them through the lens of African traditions, which see the sacred in a vibrant, symbolic way. Isn't it wild to consider that over time, some texts were translated and retranslated so many times that their original meanings changed? Words carry power, and when you change a word, you change history. How many powerful messages about freedom, ancestry, and spiritual strength might have been watered down in those changes? It's like the truth is still there, but covered up by layers of interpretations that pull us away from what really matters. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe the spiritual emptiness a lot of people feel today comes from being disconnected from their roots? Maybe it's because we've gotten used to seeing the sacred only through the stories imposed on us, forgetting there's a living, vibrant spiritual heritage that still beats strong in Black culture. And it's tied directly to parts of the Bible almost nobody talks about. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about all this? Do you believe some parts of the Bible might be connected to African traditions that have been hidden throughout history? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know, because understanding the roots of faith shows me you're curious to keep exploring this with me. And get ready, because what we're about to dig into next is even more incredible. It's not enough just to find hidden connections. We have to reveal the evidence that shows how this spirituality has survived the test of time, despite all attempts to erase it. If there's one thing that makes us question everything we've been taught about history, it's the evidence that pops up like pieces of a puzzle nobody wants to put together. When we look at ancient documents, historical accounts, and archaeological discoveries, we see a clear thread leading straight to African spirituality and the power of Black religion. A power so deep, it's been hidden for centuries. It's like the world was built on top of a huge wall of silence, a barrier blocking people from seeing just how crucial these traditions were in shaping human spirituality. The first clues aren't just in ruins or forgotten scrolls in old libraries. They're also alive in cultural traditions that still exist today. Imagine an ancient ceremony shown in a painting over 3,000 years old. Figures dancing around a fire, calling on nature's forces, holding symbols like amulets and objects of spiritual power. This isn't just art. It's a record etched in stone proving that thousands of years ago, people had spiritual knowledge connected to the earth, the sky, and the human spirit. Similar records show up across Africa, like our ancestors left clues so we wouldn't forget where we come from. Historical accounts from travelers and explorers also back this up. Many of them described African civilizations with awe, amazed by their rituals and spiritual wisdom. They couldn't understand how those societies lived so deeply connected to nature and a sense of divinity present in everyday life. To outsiders, it all seemed strange or different. Maybe that's why this wisdom was so easily labeled pagan or forbidden. But if you read those stories carefully, you'll see behind every word the recognition of something bigger, something those men couldn't explain but knew was real. And what about archaeology? Across Africa, artifacts have been found that don't fit conventional history. Ceremonial masks carved with amazing detail, drums etched with cosmic designs, metal instruments still showing marks of spiritual power. Some researchers say these weren't just ritual objects. They were keys, tools that opened a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. When you think about it, doesn't it seem like these symbols connect directly to stories in the Bible about sacred objects like the Ark of the Covenant? Plenty of academic studies have tried to explore these links, but they usually end up mired in controversy. And honestly, it's easy to see why. When someone starts to reveal that the foundation of spirituality as we know it today is deeply rooted in African traditions, it shakes the whole power structure. And unfortunately, the academic world, just like religious institutions, often prefers to stick with what's comfortable rather than challenge the status quo. How much research has been silenced or ignored simply because it exposed uncomfortable truths? Yet, some of these truths are impossible to hide. Archaeological digs of ancient temples have uncovered records showing rituals tied to the energy of nature, the power of the elements, and connections with spiritual beings. These rituals are surprisingly similar to practices still found in African traditions today. It's like the core of this spirituality has survived for thousands of years, crossing time and resisting every attempt to erase it. When we look closely at this evidence, we realize Black religion isn't just a cultural tradition. It's a spiritual system that connects directly to the essence of life. It's no surprise that many of these symbols, rites, and teachings still show up, even when they're disguised in other religions. Have you ever noticed how some Christian ceremonies feel a lot like ancient African rituals? The singing style, the rhythm of the drums, the repetition of words, almost like mantras. These are legacies of a knowledge that just couldn't be destroyed. And it doesn't stop there. Independent researchers, anthropologists, and even some historians have challenged the official stories to show that the history of human spirituality is way richer and more diverse than we've been told. Some argue that contact between African traditions and other cultures shaped many of the beliefs we now think of as universal. But of course, not everyone is comfortable with that idea. How often have you seen a documentary or read a book that openly talks about African influence on Western spirituality? Almost never. And that's no accident. Now imagine what would happen if all this evidence came out clearly and undeniably. How would people react if they discovered that what we've called mystery or forbidden is actually the root of what we call faith? Would modern religions admit that many of their practices were inspired by or adapted from something much older? Something coming from the depths of Africa and the wisdom of the ancestors? Take a moment and think about that. What would you do if you could hold one of these sacred objects in your hands? If you could hear the real story, told by the descendants of those who guarded this wisdom? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to see the proof that you're as curious as I am to keep unraveling this mystery. And don't think we're done, because the next revelations are even more intense. So far, we've talked about evidence and signs left in history, but what's next goes deeper. We're about to dive into the hidden side, the so-called forbidden knowledge. The stuff that scared empires and churches so much they had to hide it at all costs. Have you ever wondered what it really means for something to be called forbidden? We're not just talking about rules or secret traditions. We're talking about truths so powerful that if fully revealed, they could shake the foundations of the dominant beliefs worldwide. The hidden side of black religion is a realm wrapped in mystery, protected by codes and secrets that have survived centuries of silence. These secrets weren't kept because they're evil or bad, as many would have us believe, but because they hold such intense spiritual power that they've always scared those who want to control the masses. Imagine knowledge that can free minds, awaken inner strength, and give people back control over their own lives. Now think about the impact that would have on a world ruled by systems that prefer to keep people submissive. The hidden side of black religion involves practices, rituals, and symbols, always connected to the essence of life. These teachings talk about a direct relationship with ancestors, spiritual communication without middlemen, and a deep connection to the energy of nature and the universe. Throughout history, these practices were persecuted and forced underground, not because they were evil, but because they threatened the centralized power of churches and colonial empires. Those controlling the spiritual narrative knew that as long as people had access to these rites and knowledge, they would never be fully dominated. There are powerful stories about those who dared to reveal these truths and paid dearly for it. Priests, spiritual leaders, even scholars were persecuted, ridiculed, or killed for trying to show the world that there is a living, vibrant, ancestral spirituality that doesn't need fancy temples or rigid dogma to exist. These men and women were called heretics, witches, or sorcerers, just because they refused to bow to a faith controlled by a select few. During colonization, persecution was brutal. Entire communities were forbidden from practicing their ceremonies. Drums were destroyed, languages wiped out, and sacred rituals had to be hidden inside festivals and cultural events so they wouldn't vanish. Did you know many popular festivals today, full of music and dance, carry symbols and meanings straight from this ancestral spirituality? It's like our ancestors found a way to preserve the sacred by disguising it as something ordinary. And when we look deeper, we see that the fear around this religion was manufactured to keep people away from it. How many times have you heard that African traditions are connected to black magic or evil forces? That's simply not true. That narrative was created to discredit something pure and real. What's hidden in black religion is a deep understanding of life, the cycles of nature, and how spiritual energy can be used for healing, protection, and transformation. Imagine the power of a prayer sung in an ancient rhythm that aligns body, mind, and spirit. This kind of power doesn't serve systems that want to keep people weak and divided. A handful of independent researchers and brave scholars have tried to break this silence. They say that behind many modern religious practices, you can still find clear traces of these forbidden teachings. When you look closely at certain rituals, you see symbols that come straight from African traditions. The power of the drum, the use of herbs, dance as prayer, calling on ancestors and protective spirits. All of this is part of knowledge so old it defies any attempt to erase it. But those who try to bring these truths forward almost always face pushback. There are many stories of persecution. Spiritual leaders who refused to give up their rights were arrested, tortured, and even killed, all in the name of so-called salvation. Even today, in some parts of the world, people face discrimination or prejudice just for keeping this ancestral heritage alive. Fear of the unknown, fueled by centuries of misinformation, still keeps many away from reconnecting with their own spiritual roots. The hidden side of black religion also speaks of a direct connection with spiritual forces that don't fit into traditional explanations. To some this feels threatening, but really it's liberating. It's like opening a door to realize the divine isn't distant or out of reach. It's inside you. It's in the earth, the air, the water, the fire. The elements the ancients called on in their rituals are present in everything that exists. Now think about this. Why was something so profound and true ever considered dangerous? Maybe because when people realize they're part of the divine, they don't need middlemen to practice their spirituality anymore. That's revolutionary. That's what really scared empires. Because when you understand that the power is inside you, no institution can control you. I want to hear what you think. What do you believe exists in this hidden side that causes so much fear? Do you think people are ready to hear these truths? Write your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what's been forbidden. That will show me you're ready to keep going on this journey with me. Stick around, because what's coming next will deepen this connection even more. So far, we've talked about hidden secrets and concealed power. But next, we're diving into even more fascinating territory. We'll explore how this spirituality connects with faith, philosophy, and human spiritual growth. When we talk about the spiritual and philosophical side of Black religion, we enter a deep space, one that might not always make sense to the rational mind, but is deeply felt by the spirit. This ancestral spirituality reminds us that we're not just physical bodies, but complex beings made up of body, soul, and spirit. Black religion has always taught that everything in the universe is energy, that everything is connected, and that nothing happens by chance. Unlike many belief systems that limit spirituality to dogma and strict rules, these teachings invite us to look deep inside ourselves and realize we're part of a living network linking the living, the dead, and the divine forces that govern creation. Ancestry is one of the most fascinating pillars of this knowledge. When the ancients said ancestors are alive, they weren't just talking about memories or symbolic honors. They believed the energy of those who came before us stays present, guiding, strengthening, and protecting us. That's why so many African and Afro-descendant traditions keep ancestor reverence rituals alive. This connection is both cultural and spiritual. It's like each generation leaves a light that brightens the path for the next. Think for a moment. How many times have you felt an invisible presence protecting you, or a mysterious force pushing you to make the right choice? That might have been your ancestors at work. Philosophically, Black religion offers a view different from traditional Western thinking. It doesn't see the world as a simple battle between good and evil, but as a dance of energies where every element has its role and balance. What some cultures call evil might just be misdirected energy. It's like everything is part of a web of learning and growth. This understanding invites us to be more aware of ourselves, realizing we have the power to change our reality by how we focus our energy, words, and thoughts. Another key point is the relationship between spirit and nature. In Black religious traditions, nature isn't just a resource to use. It's a living, conscious, powerful being. Trees, water, wind, and fire are seen as expressions of the divine, channels where spiritual energy flows. This philosophy teaches that caring for nature means caring for our own soul, because we're part of it. How many times have you felt renewed just by spending time in nature? That's no accident. It's living proof that the divine is everywhere. Rituals with singing, dancing, and drumming aren't just cultural. They're expressions of this deep spiritual connection. These practices are ways to align body and soul, raise vibrations, and create a bridge to the spiritual world. Every drumbeat, every song, every gesture carries deep meaning. It's like they're spiritual codes, languages of energy that awaken something inside us that's been asleep. The experience is so powerful that many people feel something they can't quite explain when they take part in an ancestral ritual. It's as if the soul remembers who we really are. The philosophy behind Black religion also teaches spiritual responsibility. It says every action has an energetic consequence. It's not just what we do, but the intention behind it that shapes the impact we have on the world. This awareness changes everything. It changes how we treat others, how we relate to life. It's a philosophy that calls us to a higher level of consciousness, to an awakening of the soul. Have you ever stopped to think about this? Have you ever felt like your soul's story goes beyond this life? Like there's something inside you that recognizes these ideas as part of who you really are? That feeling of recognition is why so many people get emotional when they connect with ancestral traditions. It's like a spiritual memory passed down through generations is suddenly activated. The spiritual power in Black religion isn't something to fear. It's something to respect and understand. It's about healing, connection, and transformation. It shows us we can connect with greater forces if we're willing to listen, feel, and learn from those who came before us. This power lives inside each of us, waiting to be awakened. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you feel something in your soul that connects with these ideas? Do you sense this ancestral energy alive within you? If so, write "I feel the strength of my ancestors" in the comments. That will show me you're ready to continue this spiritual journey with me. What we're about to explore next goes even deeper. So far, we've talked about the soul, spirit, and ancestry. Next, we'll dive into even more intense reflections, questioning how we see the world, our existence, and the role this ancestral wisdom can play in our personal and collective growth. Have you ever thought about the impact of realizing such a powerful truth has been hidden from you for generations? This isn't just a historical matter. It's about identity, belonging, and connection to your own spiritual essence. What does it mean to you to discover that your faith, spirituality, and worldview may have been shaped so you'd never know the whole truth? That's a heavy thought because it forces us to question everything we've been taught to accept as true and unchangeable. And let's be honest, questioning isn't comfortable. It's like a curtain gets pulled back and suddenly you see what was right in front of you, hidden by fear, prejudice, or manipulation. When we think about Black religion and everything it stands for, ancestry, spiritual power, connection with nature, and invisible forces, it's hard not to feel a mix of frustration and awe. Frustration because so many people were denied the freedom to live their spirituality openly, persecuted, silenced, forced to give up practices that connected them to the divine and strengthened their communities and identities. But awe too, because despite all that, this spirituality survived. It crossed oceans, endured centuries of oppression, and today still pulses with the same strength heard in the voices of our ancestors. But here's the big question. Now that this truth is in front of you, what will you do with it? Knowing something was hidden is like receiving a key. You can hold on to it and keep living like nothing's changed. Or you can use it to open doors, to go deeper, and discover what lies beyond the story you've always been told. Black religion isn't just a forgotten chapter of history. It's a living force inviting you to reconnect with your own spiritual power, to rediscover who you really are and what your place is in this world. Could that feeling of spiritual emptiness many people experience come from being cut off from these roots? It's no surprise that more and more people are searching for something deeper, something that speaks directly to the soul and brings real meaning. And that's exactly what these traditions offer: a deep dive into yourself, a journey of healing, self-discovery, and transformation. Now, imagine for a moment what the world would be like if everyone knew these truths. If everyone understood that spiritual strength isn't owned by any institution but lives inside each of us, waiting to be awakened. Would people keep accepting life bound by imposed dogmas and rules? Would empires, churches, and control systems hold the same power if everyone realized they could connect directly with the divine? That's a question that scares a lot of people because the answer could change everything. And here's an important thought for you. Are you ready to look beyond what you've always been told? Are you willing to explore, question, and open yourself to what's been hidden? Because this journey isn't just about learning. It's about feeling and reconnecting with something you may not have even known was inside you. When we talk about ancestry, we're not just talking about blood. It's about memory, energy, a force that goes beyond time. And trust me, once you connect with that, nothing feels the same. Think about the choices you make every day. How many of those choices are influenced by beliefs that were handed down to you without question? How many times have you stopped trusting your own intuition because someone told you it wasn't right or acceptable? Black religion, with all its ancestral wisdom, teaches us that true spirituality is what frees us. It's the voice of what you feel deep in your heart, the connection to the universe in a real, powerful way. So now, I want to ask you, what does this truth stir up in you? Does it scare you, make you curious, make you want to learn more? Drop a comment below. I want to go deeper than the surface because that will show me you're not just listening, but ready to dive into this journey with me. Make no mistake, what's coming next is even more intense. It's not enough to just think about what's been hidden. You need to learn how to bring this knowledge into your everyday life, how to channel this ancient energy in real ways, and how to use these teachings to transform not just your own life, but the world around you. That's exactly what we'll be diving into next. If you've made it this far, it means you're part of a special group. People who seek the truth, who aren't satisfied with half-baked stories, and who feel in their hearts that there's something much bigger waiting to be discovered. That shows you're committed to your own growth and expanding your consciousness. So here's what I want you to do. Subscribe to the channel now. That way, you'll keep getting deep, powerful content like this. Content that's not afraid to expose what many try to hide. If this video touched you in any way, hit that like button right now. That simple action tells YouTube this topic matters and helps this knowledge reach more people who, like you, are searching for answers. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below that says, "I watched till the end and want more truths." That tells me you're part of this journey and ready to keep exploring everything the world doesn't want you to know. Oh, and don't stop there. Check out the next video popping up on your screen. That's where I'll keep revealing even more shocking secrets and insights that will change how you see history and spirituality. Click now, and let's keep walking this path toward the truth no one else has told you.